So there's a new political party on the scene in the UK, and it's called Restore Britain. What we're going to do here is break down exactly what they're all about, their mission, their policies, their big vision for the country, all pulled directly from their launch announcement. All right, let's dive in.
Okay, so right off the bat, the way they launch this party tells you a lot. The announcement starts on a farm, and you have to ask, why a farm? Well, the speaker paints it as this symbol of real hard work, of responsibility, thinking about the future, about generations, not just about the next election. It's a really deliberate choice to ground the whole message in this kind of rural, traditionalist British identity.
And it's from this very farm-like, rural setting that Restore Britain makes its official debut. And listen, they are not thinking small here. Their ambition is huge. We're talking about fielding hundreds of candidates in the next general election. Plus, they're planning to team up with, and these are their words, patriots in aligned political parties.
All right, so what's the big promise here? What's Restore Britain actually offering? Well, it all kicks off with a really clear message. They are setting themselves up as the complete opposite of the current political establishment.
Their whole pitch, really, is that they're a genuine alternative. They're basically saying, hey, for the first time ever, you voters have an option that's going to tell you the hard truth. They're refusing to sell what they call those comforting lies that other politicians might. And what's really interesting is how they talk about their candidates. It's almost more about who they aren't. They make it crystal clear. These are not your typical career politicians. Nope, they're pulling people from business, the military, science, medicine, education. Folks who they say are well outside the existing political establishment. Now this quote, this one is absolutely key to understanding their whole mindset. They are not, I repeat, not promising easy solutions. It's the opposite. They're framing their entire platform as a necessary but, and they say this explicitly, incredibly painful journey to fix what they see as a country in deep, deep crisis.
Okay, so if the medicine is going to be painful, what's the very first dose? Well, that leads us right into their number one policy focus, the one they go into the most detail on, immigration and controlling the borders.
They make the case that there's one single priority that has to be tackled before anything else, and it really all boils down to this one fundamental question. Who gets to come to Britain? And maybe even more importantly, who gets to stay here? And their answer to that question is a super direct three-step plan. Step 1, stop. Just stop mass immigration, full stop. Step 2, detain and deport. Every single person here illegally gets detained and then they're deported. And step 3 is this massive reversal. For the foreseeable future, more people have to leave the UK than come in.
So who exactly are they talking about when they say people must leave? Well, here's their checklist for foreign nationals. You're on the list if you can't speak English, if you're living in social housing, if you claim benefits, or if you commit a crime. And it doesn't stop there. It also includes failing to integrate or, and this is a quote, actively hating our way of life.
And just so there's no misunderstanding about the sheer scale of this policy, they use this incredibly direct, no-nonsense language. They're putting it right out there. They are fully prepared for a massive number of people to leave the country if they fit into those categories we just talked about.
So yeah, the big takeaway here is the scale. We're talking about millions. That word isn't just thrown in there by accident. It's central to their message. They are framing this as a huge population-level shift. Okay, let's switch gears to the economy. What's their plan there? Well, they frame it as a kind of crusade, a necessary fight to take apart what they call parasitic Britain.
So here's their economic worldview, basically in a nutshell. On one side, you have the problem they see, millions of healthy Brits who aren't working, and a welfare system that, in their view, is just funding shirkers. And their solution? Well, get those people back to work, punish what they call indolence, and bring back stable, logical policies that actually help businesses instead of getting in their way. And they've got a 4-step plan to make that happen. First up, mandate work. Simple as that. If you can work, you must work or your benefits are gone. Second, cut taxes, slash what they call suffocating taxes on work and business. Third, dismantle the bureaucracy. That means getting rid of what they call bloated quangos and overbearing HR culture. And finally, step 4, just burn away all the unnecessary regulations so businesses can actually breathe and grow.
All right, so we've covered immigration and the economy, but there's more. The party also lays out a very specific vision for what British culture and national identity should look like. Let's get into that. They actually start by defining what Britain even means. And for them, it's not just an economy or some abstract idea or even just a passport. No, they define it very specifically as a nation, a people, our people. So they're really emphasizing this idea of a collective shared identity. And this really lays out the two sides of that coin. It's a pretty stark comparison of what they plan to celebrate versus what they plan to resist. So, on the one hand, they want to champion things like Christian heritage, responsibility, and duty. But on the other hand, they're vowing to resist what they call radical Islam and to outright ban things like Sharia law, the burqa, and cousin marriages. And here's one of their most specific and, you could say, most controversial policy ideas. They plan to pass laws to make sure there's no halal or kosher slaughter on British soil. And their justification for this? It's incredibly simple and direct. This is Britain, and we will do things our way. So, after all that, how do they tie it all together? Let's take a look at their final call to action, which pretty much sums up their entire mission. When you boil it all down, their stated purpose is pretty straightforward. It's to restore Britain, to make it a better place, a safer place, a more prosperous place, and specifically for, quote, British men and women to raise their families. And they bring it right back around to that theme we heard earlier, that none of this is going to be easy. They openly admit the path they're suggesting will be difficult, even painful. But here's the twist. They reframe joining them not as just a political choice, but as a shared duty, a collective responsibility. And this is the very last line of their announcement, their big sign-off. It's meant to be this powerful, unifying call to action that really tries to turn their political ideas into something bigger, a kind of national moral duty for the people they're trying to reach. Which, leaves us with a pretty big final thought. When a party promises a painful restoration, what are they really asking for? Are they just offering a new set of policies? Or is something deeper going on? Are they asking their followers to completely rethink what it means to support a party? To see it not as a choice you make for your own benefit, but as a duty, a collective sacrifice for the nation?